So the Audi A5 clutch is finished, and now I'm on to my second clutch, the Audi A3.
So the first thing you want to do is remove the battery terminals, and they are 10mm nuts. Once the terminals are out the way, then you can remove the little casing for the battery. And then you can begin to dismantle all of the air duct for the airbox. In simple terms, just all of the plastic at the front of the car. Once that's all out of the way, then you've got a little 13mm bolt which holds the battery in place. And then you can just slide the battery forward and lift it up and out. To get further access to the gearbox, you want to then start removing all of the little pieces and the electrical connectors that are on the airbox, and then you can just pull it out from the grommets that it's sat on. Then you want to remove the 3 bolts that hold the battery tray in, and then you've also got a little nut just on the chassis of the car. And that's the battery tray out of the way. So next you can start attacking all of the little Torx screws that hold in the arch lining to the wheel. With the arch lining out of the way, you can then start taking out the multi-spline bolts that hold in the drive shaft into the gearbox. Once you've undone all 6 of the bolts, you can then just knock the drive shaft out through the middle of where the drive shaft bolt would go with a little breaker bar or something along those lines. Moving back up to the engine bay with our shopping list of things to remove, I began with removing the gear linkages and the gear linkage holder. Make sure with anything that you take off, whether it be clips, bolts, nuts, anything, make sure you put them back exactly where you took them off, so then when you go to put it all back together, you know where everything is and you know which bolt went where. So sometimes the shifter weight gets a little bit stuck, so just use a little bit of WD-40 and then give it a pull. So the next thing that I went for here is the starter motor and the starter motor bolts. I would actually recommend to leave the starter motor in for, nearly last, because you don't actually need it out and it is quite heavy, and you've got to strap it up somewhere if not. So back underneath the car, I start to take out the 6 bolts holding the other drive shaft in, but I'm not actually removing the whole drive shaft. All I'm doing is taking out the 6 bolts which are bolted onto the gearbox, so when I remove the gearbox, the other drive shaft is not holding onto it. Back up top once again, we can remove the 2 little bolts holding in the slave cylinder and move that to the side. And then there's this little brace which you can just remove with 2 bolts, and I believe they're both a 16mm socket. So as you saw a moment ago, I lifted the engine very slightly with the motorbike jack that I have, but you can definitely use a trolley jack. And then you can remove the 3 bolts holding the dog bone mount in. You can then undo the 2 bolts holding the engine mount in, and then there's actually 3 more bolts which you can see. You can't actually see it, but you can see in this image the rough area of where the 3 bolts are. You will have to take those out, and then you can begin to remove all of the bell housing bolts on the gearbox. Make sure what you do is you leave 1 bolt in the bottom of the gearbox, so when you remove that you can actually hold the gearbox while you're removing it, because if not it will just slip and potentially land on you or smack something, and obviously it's not going to be great. So yeah, just make sure that you leave a bolt in on the bottom. As soon as you remove that bolt, you're ready to take the gearbox out. So after the gearbox is out and on the floor, it's always good practice to clean the gearbox while it's out. And to do that, you can use some carburetor cleaner as I'm using here, or you can use brake and clutch cleaner. That's absolutely fine. And after a nice little clean, you can remove the fork and the release bearing and put the new release bearing back onto the fork, making sure that you grease up the fork where the release bearing touches.
So here you can see where the flywheel was failing. You can see all of these burn marks all the way around here, and same on the clutch. You've got all the same all the way around, and then on the pressure plate, all those same sort of burn marks where it's been slipping. So yeah, it's going to be a good swap. And here's the brand new flywheel. I'm just going to give that a quick clean over, and then we'll get that installed. Also got the new bolts here to attach that to the crank.
When you're ready to put the new flywheel back onto the engine, there is a little locator pin on the back of the flywheel which you can match up to a little indent on the engine side. And then as you can see, all I'm doing is I'm tightening down the bolts, just very hand tight, just with the gun, so I can get all of those nice and snug, and then I can go around with the torque wrench and torque them up to spec. Make sure to do some research on the exact torque settings of your exact vehicle. But for this A3, it was 60 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. So once you've installed the new clutch and the pressure plate and made sure that the clutch is aligned, you can then begin to reinstall the gearbox. And again, as you would have found out last time, one bolt is enough to hold that gearbox in, which feels disgusting, but it will hold it. So just get one bolt in, make sure that's solid, and then you can look to get the rest of the bolts in. Once the gearbox is reinstalled, you can then start to put all of the bell housing bolts back in and then torque them down, and it's basically just putting everything back exactly where it came from. Thanks so much for watching this video. If I helped you out or you took any value from this video, make sure to leave a like, let me know in the comment section below what you learned, and make sure to hit the subscribe button for more of this kind of content. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.
up a bit.
You may be facing tribulation, but don't let it get you down. What I'm saying may take patience, but you're gonna make it out. I scorched my own 2 feet to pull you to safety. When the fires are burning, burning like crazy, carnage, but I will take your place. I'll be your shield. I will
Artlist.io